Many people talk about the ups and downs of married life, but no one really prepares you for life after your spouse passes away. Welcome to Widowhood Real Talk with Dr. Tina, a safe place for widows, widowers, and their friends and family to talk about love and loss. Find comfort as you listen to honest conversations between Dr. Tina and invited guests who've experienced the loss of their forever partner, share their stories of love, grief, and healing. You are not alone in this journey. Join today's episode and discover a wealth of resources and learn how to connect with others who are traveling the same path. This is Widowhood Real Talk with Dr. Tina.
Welcome to Voices of Widowhood, Healing Through the Holidays. This is our mini-series going from November 2025 into January 26. Our guest today, Rosie, is going to bring the fire of widowhood into this conversation. She's an award-winning podcaster and took time out to speak with us. Let's get into this conversation with a widow that was very young and what she's learned and how it can help you. Hello, Rosie. Welcome to the Widowhood.
Thank you so much for having me, Tina. It's great to be here.
So when you hear welcome to the widowhood, and what's the ticker tape in your mind like when you hear that now? What does that mean to you?
I think now it has a very different meaning. I now hear that as a welcome to my tribe, welcome to my community. I get you, I understand you. Early on, if you'd asked me, 6 months, a year into my widowhood, welcome to the widowhood, you probably have a black eye.
And so that being the black eye, tell us about your podcast, what you do, and why your voice is so relevant, Miss Award winner in this conversation.
Thank you so much. I did ask you to refer to me by award winner at every opportunity, Tina, so I'm glad you listened. Thank you very much. I host a podcast called Widowed AF, and it does stand for what you think it might.
No. What does it stand for? We need to know.
It stands for, well, I told the BBC it stands for as friends. It stands for as fuck. And it's been the greatest joy that's come out of my grief. I created it in my bedroom with an iPad and a towel to stop the sound reverb. And I just said to people, do you want to come and tell your story about being widowed? And people did. They came, you build it, they will come, as they say. And it just turned into this resource that people are turning to, because when you are part of the club that nobody wants to be a member of, you feel incredibly alone. You get it, right? And to have the ability to listen in your ears while you're on the school run, in the car, whatever you may be doing, to listen to somebody talk about their experience, it won't be the same because no two stories are, but there'll be so many similarities and there'll be so many moments. And it's a bit of a trite expression, but of a feeling seen.
That is so important. And I am so grateful, Miss Award winner, for you confirming to be part of Voices of Widowhood Healing Through the Holiday. Because the holidays brings a different concept to grief that's already complicated. So how did you come up with this name, though? I do want to know that as far as your podcast.
Well, years ago, so I was quite freshly widowed, and I got the Instagram handle Widowed AF. I've done nothing with it. I do now, but at that point I did nothing with it because I felt I'm a writer. I did my degree in journalism and I love to write. And I thought, there's a book in this. There's a book. Somebody needs to talk about what the reality of being widowed is like. I also have procrastination issues. So this book never happened. It has since. But so I said to my friend, let's do this podcast instead. And the name felt really kind of integral to what we do because it is tongue in cheek. It's a little bit naughty. You're going to attract people who are, they say your vibe attracts your tribe. I'm a bit sweary and a bit naughty. So for somebody to come on who was in a very different point in their grief or was dealing with it very differently, it wouldn't be the right place. But for the majority of people in or around my age group, it is what they're looking for.
And your age group is, if we're able to say?
I'm 44 currently.
Okay. So you became widowed very young.
37, yeah, just turned 30.
And you're kind of thinking of it, what the has just happened here?
Yeah, exactly. Help, I'm widowed as fuck, right?
And it is. And I think being able to be in a space to freely talk about without limitations, being like you said that, like this is hard. And if I don't have a space to have this real conversation, especially in the company of other people, where am I going to learn how to deal with this. Where am I going to find my tribe? So thank you for being part of this conversation. I didn't do AF, but Real Talk was kind of my version of that. So okay,
Yeah.
we'll go with that.
You probably pass all the screening things. Someone said to me, "You need to take swearing out because you're getting blacklisted off." I was like, I'm not
You do
taking
what you
swearing
got to
out."
do and express that. This is the real talk. I am not holding you back. So, being a young widow, in what year did you become a widow, if we may ask?
2018, it was March.
Okay. March 2018. So, you're going to be speaking from the Rosie then into the Rosie now.
Mhm.
So, with the first conversation that we want to have, holiday, grieving, and parenting, not the children, but you as the parent. How do you manage that emotion, the overwhelming versus trying to be strong for your children? What does that look like for you as a parent?
Yeah, Christmas, the holidays, it's a tough one. Ben loved Christmas. He's from a big family. He's one of six. So Christmases were big family events. They were chaos. There was, huge piles of presents. And it was a really, really happy time for us. The first Christmas, I did what any sensible adult will do, and I ran away from my problems. We went to Cape Verde. I put it on a credit card. My mum and dad came, and we had Christmas in the sunshine. That was amazing. However, it's not always affordable to zip off to another side of the world. So I've done various things. I've gone in the British Sea on Christmas Day. Just why not? We have been away again. We've been to a hotel in the UK. We've been to Jamaica for Christmas. This year, the children have asked me, could we have Christmas at home? And so I've said yes. And my mum and dad will come over, and it's the first time I have done Christmas I suppose it's the first time I've allowed myself to sit in it at Christmas instead of running from it. That first Christmas we were going away, so I didn't get a Christmas tree. One of our traditions was we'd go to the Christmas tree farm. They're growing, and you pick your tree and they cut it down, you take it home. And we did that every year. So obviously I didn't want to do that. And it got to about 5 days before Christmas, and the boys said, "Oh, we really want a tree." My car was in the garage, so I walked up to the shop near me that sold trees, and I'm dragging back this enormous Christmas tree on my own, and I'm thinking, what is this? What am I doing here? What am I doing? And I think there is an argument for putting your own needs to one side at Christmas a little bit, particularly if you have young children, because you don't want that they've already lost so much, right? You don't want to steal the Christmas magic too. So in many ways, I have listened to them and been led by them and what they want and what they need. I don't set a table for him at Christmas or anything like that. But yeah, it's tough Christmas. It is.
Thank you. Besides the running away, which is something I can relate to because we were in Jamaica that first Christmas, and my husband also loved taking the kids out to the farm, cutting down a tree. And I envisioned myself out there with this axe, just crying and nothing happening, and walking away, being in the car crying, struggling to tie this tree onto the car, and it just wasn't working. And on top of it, both of the children had left and they were both in the military. So for them to now come home just seemed like more than any of us could endure. So we all met at the boat for this cruise and went there. But there's privilege and gratefulness to have the economic means to be able to run away, to make that choice. And everyone doesn't have that. Grief can be complicated by now I've gone from this two income life to my
Yeah.
spouse's last check and trying to figure this out.
Yeah.
In those parameters, and someone that may not be willing to travel, any recommendations for them as far as how they need to handle their emotions and not being overwhelmed with the holidays?
And that's so sad, because I got a lot of friends who were left in severe economic peril when their partners died. To a certain extent, I utilised credit cards quite heavily. And I see the fear, the fear of how am I going to find that extra money to buy the presents, the Christmas food, we're bombarded, aren't we, with pictures of Instagrammable decor and, I'm
Mm.
putting Halloween things up. And I think this enormous pressure to create this perfect Christmas when you may not have the financial or the emotional strength to be able to do it. I think there is an argument for reaching out in this situation, for saying to your friends, your family, I really don't want to be alone this Christmas. Please, can you help me? And I think it would take a pretty cruel person to deny a widow some support over Christmas. I'm very bad at asking for support, so it's all well and good me saying this. I would be sat on my own waiting to be invited. And I think perhaps, and maybe this is a message for the wider community. If you know somebody in your community has lost somebody close to them this Christmas, don't assume that they're going to be looked after. Ask, make sure, check in, make sure they've got support. I think making a Christmas tradition that is just yours can be really powerful, actually. I think you don't necessarily want to let go of all the traditions you created, but I think to try and replicate Christmas when your spouse or your partner was alive is almost a bit of a fool's errand. It's always going to feel jarring. So perhaps it is, like me going to swim in the sea. Perhaps you go, right, okay, Christmas morning, we're going to go for a walk this year. You drag the teenagers out, they'll probably kick and scream all the way. But you start the process of building up a new tradition.
I can see that, and they
Mhm.
will kick and scream. I
Oh,
do
yeah.
also like the idea that you mentioned before, taking the lead from your
Mm.
children, because I know for me, the week Mark passed, it took a while for my brain to realize my children's father died.
Mhm.
Yes, my husband, yes, my world crumbled, and I had to bring them into the process because before, it was Mark and I making all the decisions.
Mhm.
Now I needed these young adults to be part of this because their life has been destroyed just as much as mine, and that was helpful bringing them into the fold and took some of the pressure off of me and feeling like I had to do everything. Being a young widow, where do you feel like your identity, social assumptions about how your widowhood was going to happen, and feeling silenced, and then compounding the holidays on top of that?
Mhm. Yeah, I think one of the things I talk about in the podcast quite a lot is widowhood is kind of twofold. On one hand, you become very much public property. Everybody's got an opinion on how you're grieving, whether you're dating or not, whether you're parenting, right? Everybody has an opinion. But you also kind of lose all your autonomy. And this is why I think it's important that you said about the children, bringing them in, because they've lost control. They could not control this happening. So to give them some voice. But I think with widowed, suddenly you're putting your parents as your next of kin again, and like you say, you've lost your financial independence a lot of the time. You may have to rely on charitable support, friends and family, benefits. So to reclaim a little bit of your own independence, I think is very, very powerful, but also really, really tough.
The idea of being a young widow,
Mhm.
your identity,
Yeah.
feeling silenced, and societal assumptions. So we
Sorry.
can break that down in any particular way. How have you navigated that for yourself?
I think initially I felt very much under the microscope. I felt like everything I did was under scrutiny, and I felt that I had to present a mask to the world that I had everything under control. So whilst I was drinking very heavily, I want to say I was grieving, but I think my grief was kind of stunted because I was just shutting it down. So on the surface, like the swan, on the swan, I looked like I had my shit together. The kids were getting to school on time. But underneath it, I was very, very scared of anybody seeing beneath it. I think
Mhm.
there's a lot of shame in widowhood, a lot of shame around things like sexual desire. We talked about, wanting to
Yeah.
talk to people around who understand, well, this phenomenon called widow's fire. Like, nobody told me to expect that.
Okay, let's pause. Let's not even
Uh-huh.
scoot over that because so now I'm a young widow. I'm still sexually desiring.
Mhm.
I still want to be touched. And now I hear people saying, well, your husband died. How could you be thinking about something like that? And then you come across this term, widow's fire. It's the holidays. There's a couple of people a town over. What is widow's fire? I need to know because I've been feeling like this, but I've been shamed. Let's
Mhm.
spend some time. What is widow's fire? And why is it important for widows and widowers to know?
So it's a kind of colloquialism for a point in your widowhood that is almost universal. It doesn't happen at the same time for everybody, but I would say in the 200 odd people I've spoken to, almost everybody has experienced it. And it is like being a teenager in terms of your libido just goes through the roof. It's all you can think about. You might be thinking about your late partner. You might be thinking about Joe next door. It doesn't, there's no rhyme or reason to it. And for a lot of people, this is something that can be dealt with in a safe, healthy way. You can order yourself some little toys and But for a lot of people, it can actually lead to quite risk-taking behaviors because you're quite vulnerable, and dating apps, hookup apps, they can be like let's say cesspit. That's probably a good way to describe them. And I think that adds to the shame and the confusion. I can remember talking to a friend of mine when I had a friend with benefits. That's a nice way of putting it, isn't it? And I spoke to
Like
another
what?
a female friend about it, and the look on her face, I felt so shamed and so dirty. And I really then felt, oh, I can't talk about this. I can't talk about this to anybody. And when I've met widow friends and they said, oh, you mean Widow's Fire? And I was like, yes, that's it. And I just thought, I'm not a freak. I'm not disrespecting Ben. This is a normal reaction because, my God, don't you want to feel something that isn't horrible when you're grieving?
And think about it. You've been with your spouse, your partner. Sex has been part of that. And now
Mhm,
it's cut off.
mhm.
It's gone.
It's another loss, right?
The brain, the body has not reconciled all of that and still looking to go, how do I deal with this? How do I operate with the reality of this being removed from my life?
Yeah.
Yes, you still love your spouse, but you are still alive. And so
Mhm.
now you're trying to reconcile that. And also the endorphins that come from having intercourse, sex, being touched.
Even
Am I
flirtation, right?
Yes,
Flirtation.
so am I needing that emotional high? And how do I find that other places? Because you also did mention that if I'm just serially having sex with one person after another because I'm trying to find this high, or if I'm drinking, or if I'm doing something to cope and mask this grief, I'm really putting off the inevitable of needing to deal with this loss.
Yeah.
And those things do happen, but having a space to talk about it and not feel ashamed because grief is complicated. A lot of people may have thought their grief was just missing my spouse.
Yeah.
They didn't understand
Bless.
the grief fog, the tiredness, and all these other different parts of it, that widow fire is part of the complexity of grief, no more, no less, and shouldn't be shamed about
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. And I think until you become a member of this club, these are not terminologies that you will have ever heard before.
at all. And so let's talk about the children.
Mhm.
How many children do you have? The
I
ages when their dad passed, and how have you managed or allowed them to deal with their grief? So how many children?
I have 3 children.
Great.
They are amazing children, actually. I know every mother says that, but, mine are. Uh,
Absolutely, they're award-winning mothers, so why would that not
exactly,
be amazing?
exactly. And one of the things I feel very strongly about with my children is that this terrible thing has happened to them, and it doesn't necessarily define who they become. And I think that's something I would try and reiterate to anybody who is supporting grieving children is you think at the time it happens that their life is over, that's it. They're going to be, they're going to have terrible mental health struggles. If you catastrophize, and I can't speak for all widowed children, but I can speak, sorry, all bereaved children, but I can speak for mine. And yes, there has been difficulties. Of course, there has. There's been really, really tough times, but they are all academically thriving, they're emotionally thriving, and they're good humans. So he's now 15, he was 7. Hector is 13, he was 5. And my daughter Tabitha is 8, and she was just 6 months. Mm.
Those are that's quite the spread.
We weren't going to have a third, that's why there's a big gap.
But so do you recall or provide any guidance on how you manage each of those children and their grief journey?
Oh, I mean, it was all very different. So my eldest he's very emotionally intelligent. He's always has been. He's a big reader, and he took. Somebody said to him, "You're the man of the house now," and that's something I would really caution against. It
The
wasn't done.
weight of that on a heart.
Yeah, right. And he locked down his feelings a lot. He wanted to protect me. So with him, it's taken lots of gentle support. And actually, bizarrely, I think lockdown may have helped because we were together, and it took all the pressure of school away. Hector is autistic, so his response was very different. I now know a lot more about how neurodivergent children will process grief. And he mimicked his brother initially, looked to see what he was doing. Monty was able to access there's a really great support over here. It's called Holding on Letting Go, and it's a children's bereavement charity. And The children go for 2 days over a weekend, and the mum or the dad go, or whoever it may be, go with some adults to a session, and they do a lot of craft, and it's about holding on to the memories, letting go of the pain. And that was really helpful for Monty. And you know why? Because there were other kids who'd lost a parent. He didn't know anyone else. So we talk about our tribe, it's important for them too. For Hector, it's been slightly different. He demonstrated some behavioural problems at school, which meant that he's now in a specialist provision to support children with social, emotional, mental health problems. He actually is thriving. He's kind, empathetic, loving, nurturing. He's just the loveliest, loveliest young man you could ever wish to have. So he's going to be all right. But I just know that there's been a delay for him with his grief. My daughter, at 8, we're now seeing it. I think there's a really, really unique loss when you're missing something you didn't really know. So she has therapy. I'm a big, big believer in therapy. One of my children does it while he online games, so that's accessible for him. And my daughter, she does play therapy.
Thank you for sharing that. For the mother or the father that is struggling during the holidays and seeing the differences of their children grieving, their grief, any recommendations or suggestions?
As you were talking then, I was thinking about that first Christmas, and I'd spent this money that I didn't have, and we'd flown out to do this lovely sorry, I say that again. I spent money that we didn't have, and we'd flown out on this lovely holiday, all-inclusive holiday. And on Christmas morning, I can remember it just feeling really flat, like really flat. And I was almost a little bit irritated. I've done all this work, I've put in all this effort. Why aren't you happy, children? And of course, it's those expectations that we inadvertently put on our kids to behave in an inverted commas, a normal way. They're not going to respond in a normal way, particularly that first Christmas. And I think that be aware that they may appear that they are ungrateful. They may retreat to their rooms. They may not want to do things like school performances, because guess what? All the dads or the mums are going to be in the front row watching their kids. Like, it's having to think about how they may feel in the moment and just granting them that compassion, that I call it equity, just giving them a little bit more space, because to expect the children to sit around the table with their party hats on and behave like nothing's happened is kind of an unrealistic expectation. But I would caveat that with saying some children will behave like nothing has happened, and that is also a normal grief response. It's very difficult to comprehend after I told my children that their dad had died, about half an hour later, they were in Harry Potter clothes playing with their wands. And I thought, oh my God, my children are psychopaths. What's wrong with them? I also know, as a result of finding my tribe, that is normal.
Children, the resilience is something that needs to be appreciated and monitored.
Yeah, because it can look like resilience, can't it, as well? You can think, well, they're fine. They're playing Harry Potter, they're fine. It's not. It's that, like we might use sex, alcohol, our phones, whatever we might use. They're using play or computer games in order to shut off their emotions for a little bit.
Thank you. So before we wrap this up, Miss Award winner, let's talk about what that award looks like, what you're doing, where people can find you, and some of the initiatives that you are doing.
So, yeah, I won gold at the British Podcast Awards, which is kind of the biggest awards for podcasting in the UK at the moment. It was best interview category, so I was pretty surprised because I was up against some kind of behemoths of British broadcasting, really. And I was, Tina, I feel quite emotional actually, because there was so much power in, everybody else walked up on stage with an entourage. There was producers, editors, PR people.
Mhm.
It was just me. Just me. My mum and dad were there. My best friend were in the audience. And I stood there, and I very much felt that this was an award not just for me, because it would be quite a boring podcast if it was just me. It was an award for everybody that's come onto the show and put their soul with me. And of course, the excitement, you get whisked backstage and they interview. I don't know how. I don't know what I said. I can't watch it back. And then you think, oh God, I've done it. What now? And so I think the next stage for me is going to be, more podcasting, I hope, and trying to kind of build a bit more awareness around the experience of widowhood without it being that veil and, the black. And I think people do need to understand that, that there is a chance you'll experience a loss, if not on this magnitude, it's certainly close. And to know that there is life after it. It's that hope word that we lose very early on.
I would agree with that. And once again, congratulations.
Thank you so
I
much.
believe widows and widowers should be celebrated.
Mhm.
We took a vow, we stood behind those words, and we accomplished something that a lot of people, frankly, don't have the opportunity to accomplish. There's something to be learned about relationship, parenting from someone that has endured, literally, and committed those vows and said, "Till death do us part."
Mm.
Now, not only are you podcasting and award winning, let's talk about retreats and other things that you are doing and how people can connect with you.
So I hosted my first retreat in October, and it was the most, gosh, you'd think the award would have been the pinnacle, right? But having 10 widowed women, because it was just for women, this one, in my home, and the soul bearing, but also the laughter. It had like hen party vibes at some points. You know, we were quite naughty and rude and giggly, but the love. And I said to my therapist, I had therapy on the Tuesday, and I said, "Oh, I think, I feel a lot better because all the stress and the planning is done." And she said to me, "I think you feel better because you got something from the retreat as well." And I realized how little time I spend in the physical company of widows. I talked a lot through Zoom calls and things, but it's in the physical company. And something beautiful happened in those 2 days. We cried. Nobody wanted to go home. We all cried. So I absolutely will be doing more of those. And you can register your interest on my website, which is widowedaf.com. I also have a book out in the new year called Widowed as that starred out. And it is part memoir, but primarily it is a collection of stories from widows. So we kind of go through the traditional 5 stages of grief, and then we talk about things like widow's fire, about the experience of losing somebody to drugs or alcohol, because that's
Mm,
very, it's like suicide. That I even have a guest that talks about assisted suicide, which is still illegal in the UK. So it's a very, very powerful book. And again, it's very much a collaborative effort, and it's kind of designed to be a guide for anybody that is widowed or is actually supporting anybody that's widowed, because there's a lot that we can learn from the widow community about how best to do it.
agreed. I am so grateful for you giving us time for this conversation. I often flip this around and give people an opportunity. This may be easy for you. Any questions that you may have of me?
I want to know more about your Secret Santa appeal that you're doing. I saw a little bit come up, and it absolutely made my heart kind of pulse, just to think of these children who perhaps won't be having the Christmas that we talk about not having the Christmas you expect. And I'm fascinated to know more about how you came up with your idea.
Thank you for that. So, Widowhood Real Talk with Tina, this podcast is connected to our overarching nonprofit,
Mhm.
which is set up to support the bereaved. When my husband passed, I'm from Chicago, so the word hood means family to me. So my husband died, my children's dad died, somebody's uncle died. So it was not just myself. And in this community, 2 widows actually came to me and said, "What can we do for for children whose parents are deceased?" What they didn't know, it was a desire deep in my heart at one point to be able to support children who have lost a parent. I just didn't have the bandwidth or the capacity. And so when they came to me with this idea, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like manifesting right here. And those 2 widows provided an overview of the program, submitted it to our board. They approved. And last year was our first time, and we had 7 families. And what they did, they worked with the parents, guardians, and helped them develop an anonymous Amazon wish list. That wish list is on our website. And so this year we actually have 11 families and 29 children. So if you go to widowhoodrealtalkwithtina.org and then select events, right there it says Children of Widowhood Secret Santa. You select that. All 11 families are listed. Their Amazon wish list is there. You select the gift and it goes right to the child. It gets delivered to them. Being anonymous is important. We
Yes.
may want to help, but we need to protect these children and their families. The volunteers have vetted to make sure that they unfortunately qualified for the program, because there were some people that applied that were not under the situation. And we had to tell them that I know economic times are hard, but we needed to protect what we were doing.
Right? It's tough to win from
Exactly.
it. Say, "Actually,
It
we can't," but you have to stay in your lane, I think, sometimes.
Exactly, and so this would allow us to provide 145 Christmas gifts if each child, and to be reasonable, the gifts are between $1 and 75. We didn't want it to be a lot. Maybe you have a book club. Maybe you have a woman's circle. Maybe you have a group at your church or whatever your club is, and you say, "I want to get online and take care of this entire family." How amazing. Now,
Mhm.
you may not like shopping, so maybe you want to donate directly and say, "This is for the Children Widowhood program." We will take those donations and buy the gifts. Widowhood Real Talk with Tina is a registered 501(c)(3) nonprofit, so depending on how you do your taxes, it may be more important for you to have a donation letter, and then we'll take that money and buy the gifts. But to be able to step in and help somebody, because we talked about how difficult economically grief is. So being able, these two widows taking this on, their names are Lisa and Tiffany. They have been doing an amazing job to support these families. And I'm just glad that they were willing to bring this idea under our umbrella. Thank you for asking that question.
That's all right, and I genuinely think it's an incredible thing to do, and we have a giving tree at the big shopping centre near me, and it's for deprived children in the area, and you go and you anonymously donate something, and we do it every year. That is one of our Christmas traditions, and I think
Mm,
teaching your children as well, if you're not bereaved or you're in a better financial place than perhaps other people, to teach your children, to make them part of the process. What do you think this little girl or boy would like? I think it shows them that Christmas isn't all about what you get, and a little bit of it is what you give.
absolutely. Rosie, once again, thank you for this conversation. I would like for you to close out this podcast, whatever ending thoughts, words of inspiration, or maybe something that we didn't cover as it relates to supporting people that are bereaved during the holiday.
Thank you, Tina, and thank you for having me on. I think my sort of parting wisdom, if we can use that word, and actually this is kind of aimed at people supporting widows a little bit as well, and it would be, please don't overpromise. Please don't say to somebody that's widowed, "You have a place at my dinner table, you may come to us at Christmas," and then leave it. You must actually follow through on your promises. I had a friend who early on said to me, "Rosie, I'm going to buy a big dining table. You and the kids, you will never have to have Sunday lunch on your own." We have a roast in the UK on a Sunday. We love it. And I was, that's so amazing. Guess how many times I've been for Sunday lunch? None. Big fat none. And it's 7 years ago and it still hurts. It's still raw. Otherwise, I wouldn't bring it up. So just think about whether you can actually deliver what you're offering. And I think maybe that applies to widows too, in terms of when you're particularly around children at Christmas, be honest with them. The children will understand, or they, they're of an age where they can, but it might be a bit different this year. And without any warning, if it's different, that will be a big shock. But if you explain to them why, I always say to my children now, Christmas will be less presents, maybe an experience for your birthday. So when you get more presents, because I can spread that across the year, right?
Agree. Rosie, the words of wisdom, the AF version of it. Thank you for bringing this here to this conversation. I look forward to working with you and just seeing more of the award-winning opportunities that are before you and what you're doing for this
Thank you,
community. Thank
Tina.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you for spending another episode with Widowhood Real Talk. If you found the contents of today helpful, share the episode to anyone you know who may need it. Subscribe to the show and tune in to Widowhood Real Talk each week. Then, visit widowhood-realtalkwithtina.org to join the community and access additional resources. Remember, you are not alone in this journey.